What do we do when the people around us won't change in the ways that we want them to? It can be very frustrating, it can be very upsetting, and it can just generally be very uncomfortable for us when people treat us a certain way or act a certain way that has an impact on the people around us or on us that makes it very uncomfortable and very unpleasant. Additionally, these are often people that it's very difficult to just step away from the relationship from, right? It could be a marriage, it could be a son or daughter, it could be a brother or sister, it could be your parents, right? Whatever it is, it can be very, very hard to deal with this. So I want to share with you some things that you can actually do that will really make a difference when people around you won't change in the way that you want them to. So number one, the first thing that we got to do is just own the feelings that we have around it. Own being pissed, frustrated, sad, depressed, hopeless, helpless, whatever it is, and just own that that's actually how you feel. And take a minute and just own that that's actually true. Now you might say, listen, dude, I got that. I'm already upset. That's why I'm watching your video. So if you got that, fantastic. You've already got step one. Step two, see if it's actually about them not changing or if it's something about you. So for example, I can be a person that can be kind of controlling, and I will attempt, and this is true, it's an attempt, doesn't actually happen, to control the world around me, people, circumstances, so that I don't have to feel upset, right? A dramatic sea change will happen in your life when you realize that you are the creator of your life experience. And if I can shift how I feel and the state of just how I am, regardless of circumstances, then magically, not actually magically, but it seems magically, the world around us starts to become more pleasant. It's quite amazing. It's something that I've realized as a monk over the last 17 years, that the more that I transform, the better my circumstances are. Meaning the external world is a reflection of our internal state. It's a rule or a law of life that I've sort of heard about, but then discovered for myself. So number two, see if it's actually about them or if there is something inside for you to transform. I'll say this, there is always something to transform whenever we're upset about some circumstance happening on the outside of our life, meaning a relationship or a circumstance. There's always something there. But see if this is actually about them, because sometimes doing our own inner work is the thing to do to get people to change, right? They're a certain way because we're a certain way. And then when we shift our way of whatever that is, then they can shift. So maybe it's that, like, I get really triggered because my roommate leaves a sponge full of water on the sink and then it becomes moldy, right? Well, if I deal with my frustration around that, accept that, like, don't get so triggered about it, which I have done before, right? Don't get so upset about it, and then have a conversation with them and make a request, then maybe he'll stop doing that. Or he'll practice stopping to do that. And I will have the opportunity to not get so bothered by things like that, and instead see it, either do it myself or gently and pleasantly in a kind and centered way, go and say, hey, you left the sponge thing, just a reminder, right? Because if we're triggered, I see this all the time working with families and also in my own life. If I'm really upset or really triggered about something, emotionally triggered about something, and I go and address it, the chances of that person getting emotionally triggered or upset about my upset increases dramatically, because then they have to work harder to not be upset because I'm upset, right? Okay, so that's number two. Number three, accept. This is a big one, all right? And this is a huge thing that I talk about a lot in this content. Accept that they won't change potentially ever. Now, I'm going to share the story that I had with a great dear friend and mentor of mine a few years ago. I was venting, complaining about this person in my life who was very upsetting, and they were very harsh and critical and rigid. And I just had a lot of issues around how they were in our working relationship and our personal relationship. And my attempts to have a conversation with them, to share how I felt, didn't really go well, right? And I was just venting, really complaining, which is fine to do, I think, from time to time. And he said, yeah, he's never going to change. And I was like, that's not possible. His commitment is to change, is to transform. And he's like, yeah, but he's not going to ever. And I really battled with him for a few minutes on this until I finally got the wisdom of it, is that accepting that something or a person won't ever change leaves only one possibility: something to do myself, right? If they're not going to change, that person or the circumstances isn't going to change, what do I do? I have two choices. I can continue to complain, resist, vent, and this is how a lot of people, I think, live their lives, honestly. Or I can do something about it, which means the only thing I can do and shift, transform is myself, right? And it really unlocked something very precious to me that I practice every day since then around if there's a situation that I don't like and people won't change or something won't change, what can I do and shift inside of myself? And again, amazingly, usually, I can't think of an exception of this actually, but usually when I do my own transformational work around that circumstance or that person, then that circumstance or person starts to shift. Again, the internal world is reflected in the external world, right? So, okay, so we've accepted, maybe you've done this, or maybe you're open to practicing this. You've accepted that that person or that situation won't change at all. Then we look at what to do, and we have a few choices. One, you have a conversation based on accountability that you're taking for your side of the relationship. Maybe it's how you feel. It's a great way to start. Sharing about that, and then making requests, hopefully from a place where you're not really upset. Now, they can decline or accept your request. You might not trust that they're going to accept your request and follow through. That's another issue. But you can have a conversation. Number two, you can end the relationship as it is, right? If it's like a romantic relationship, you could end it. It's a friendship relationship, you could end it. If you've been through all this, you've done everything, and nothing's worked, then you can end the relationship. Now, we don't ever have to end the care, but we can end the relationship in its current form. You can end the romantic side of the relationship. You can end the platonic side of the friendship. If it's someone that you're living with, like a sibling or a partner or a parent or a son or daughter, then you can't end the relationship per se, right? But you can start to hold yourself in a certain boundaried way and not engage in the same way and take some space, essentially. I've seen parents do that. I've seen children do that in actually pretty healthy ways, and it's shifted the relationship because you hold a boundary with yourself. You make a declaration and you just start taking accountability for yourself. And again, you don't cut off the care, right? But you shift how the relationship functions. And number three, you can stay in the relationship as it is and then start the work of inner transformation. And honestly, this is the step that when I see people make it, leads to a real shift, not only within themselves, but within the relationship or the circumstance that they're addressing, right? Really looking at, okay, what is my trigger about? What's my resistance about around this? For me, the soapy sponge, it's like very unpleasant for me because I have a high standard for aesthetics in my home. And when something like that happens, I get really upset. So what I've had to do actually with living with my current roommate is accept a certain standard at certain times. And at the end of the night, I do a deep clean of the kitchen and and it's fine. And then for that day, it does he is how he is. And he kind of functions how he functions. And it's totally fine. And he gets to feel free in that. And I've made requests and I've talked about it and it kind of happens or doesn't happen. And then I just take on doing a little extra work and I find a way to enjoy it. It isn't something I generally enjoy, but I've found a way to enjoy it because that's the way forward. And it's unlocked something in my own transformation around acceptance, around ease, around surrender. And then it increases my ability to take responsibility and not act like a victim in my life, which I can have the tendency to do. So give this stuff a shot and let me know how it goes in the comments.